a chapter that spans 17 seasons and comes to a close on Saturday when Alastair Clarkson coaches Hawthorn for the last time.
Premiers of 2008, Alastair Clarkson. The 2013, the 2014 AFL Premiership team. 2015 AFL Premiership team, Alastair Clarkson of the Hawthorn Football Club.
Clarko's a genius. I mean, it wasn't a matter of what he wanted to do, it was the way he saw the game. Whether it was the way the game's being played, the way the game should be played, or the way the game could be played, he was just always a step ahead.
Clarko's a genius. From a strategic perspective, there's not one person that's come before him, or I suspect will come after him, that has changed the game strategically more than Alastair Clarkson.
He's a genius. He's a competitor and he's grumpy and cranky and cantankerous, but he's caring and loving. He's all those things that make up the great coaches of any sporting code all around the world.
A guy that I think is the deepest thinker about anything football related, or life for that matter, that I've ever met.
He's protective of his family, and anyone that pulls on the brown and gold is his family.
He's the coach of our era, absolutely. So, talk about an impact on the game. As long as I've been experienced in the game, well, I mean, he stands head and shoulders above everyone else with what he's been able to achieve.
The best team of the modern era of the last 50 years produces its masterpiece. They've never been better than this.
Well, Alastair came to the club when they were in a bit of strife. Things weren't going on field the way they were intended.
There's no doubt we took a punt at the end of 2004 and we appointed him. And you need a slice of luck in these sort of things. But he just developed, he grew, he challenged conventional concepts and he took the game to new places.
His legacy to the game may be that he changed the way footy was played as dramatically as anyone.
Part of his presentation was this revolutionary game plan, which looked wonderful, looked fantastic, but it was pretty out there for its day.
We've been watching and talking about this since round one, I think, where we first saw it. We've termed it Clarko's cluster, so I hope you like the alliteration. The light bulb went off when he spent his time over in the UK to study soccer, and we saw him post that experience with the international rules. He stayed with us for a couple of days and he started talking about what he'd learnt, but didn't give anything away. Well, we saw it play out about 18 months later. This works from my understanding because the Hawks have got 3 defenders go up the ground into the middle where they've got 10 players, up to 10 players guarding space.
He put us in to this grid formation in defence, and he said, this is how we want you to defend. We don't want you to go to the man. We don't want one-on-one. You're not guarding grass, but we want you to keep a certain space and separation. And we're sort of going, OK, is this going to work? Then he got the remainder of the team to come out and kick out from fullback and try and get through us. And they couldn't get through us.
He has revolutionised our game, certainly in our generation. I know how hard it was to play against him with some of those clusters and zones. And I was down at Launceston some days and think, what the hell's going on around us?
He prepared his playing group and his coaching staff for nearly every single possibility and every single scenario that you would face in a game. So once the game unfolded and you were in certain situations, we'd been there 1,000 times in training, in meetings, in anything that we were prepared to do. He'd put us in that situation.
What makes him so great is I think he's got this insatiable desire to learn and never get comfortable. So he pushes the boundaries.
He's prickly, but I think it's almost like the circle of trust. If you're in the circle, you're golden. If you're outside the circle, you fear for your life. And I mean that in the nicest possible way.
He's a very, very smart street dog fighter.
His legacy as a club coach is up there with the greatest coaches of them all.
He's left an enormous legacy at Hawthorn. I mean, a 4-time premiership coach. He revolutionised the club at the time when the culture needed to be reset. He did that. But he knew where the club had to get to, and he took the club there, and nothing but success along the way. So, I mean, you can't speak highly enough of him.
We are all thankful for him coming into our lives. He's an icon of the Hawthorn Football Club and of the game.
We went through the COVID protocols with the AFL because this deserved a little bit better than Zoom, so it's my great pleasure to welcome Alastair Clarkson to the desk.
Thanks, Jerry. I didn't mention many of my stuff-ups, mate. I had plenty along the way. Talking about that zoning. We played Port Adelaide in a game down at Lonside, and we thought, we'll try this zone from a centre bounce. Don't worry about picking up a man. Port kicks the first 7 goals of the game. We ended up winning somehow, but we abandoned that very, very, very quickly at quarter time. So it's been a special journey.
I remember calling that game. It was quite something to behold. Are you feeling sentimental?
Well, yes and no. I'm tremendously excited, as my family are, with what the next chapter might look like and where that might take us. And but yeah, you can't be in a place for 17 years and not be touched by this sense of finality that's going to come on Saturday afternoon. I'm so stoked that we're playing Richmond. You know, my great mate Dimmer is obviously their coach, and you know, unfortunately with COVID, I'm not sure whether we can have a beer after the game together or not. But yeah, he's been a great mate for a long period of time, but helped me at Hawthorn for 4 or 5 years before he got the Richmond job. And you know, we've had some great people that have been in our club that have gone on to have significant roles right across the league, whether it's as a senior coach or, you know, like Andrew Newbold's on the commission now. You know, Mark Evans is now CEO at Gold Coast, but, you know, was the general manager of the footy operations at the league. So there's been some great people along the journey. It's probably those relationships that you treasure the most. You know, the success is great, but doing something together and having that success with a group of people where you set out on this mission together, this vision of where you wanted to get to, and could it be achieved? And we all do it, Roo, and some are lucky enough to get there and some aren't. And but it's not through lack of trying. I remember when he burst onto the scene, I'm thinking, oh, this blonde bombshell coming into the game, and I took I'm thinking, oh, he's just a bit of a prima donna, this young blonde. but it only took a mark against the Sydney Swans up in Sydney to say this bloke's the real deal. But yeah, you meet lots of great people along the way. Some of them within your own club, and some of them from other clubs. And unfortunately, we got a chance, you know, through international rules, to spend some time together and together with a lot of other players and staff from around the competition. That's probably where you open up your eyes and just understand that, you know, those Hall of Fame. You know, it's my favourite night on the whole calendar. I think for true tragics of AFL footy, it's the same. You know, where the stories get told of the journeys in AFL footy, and it's a special, and that's what's been so difficult. I've been there for 17 years. I probably should have pulled up stumps, you know, 5 or 6 years ago. And you know, the last 6 weeks has been pretty messy, to be fair, but only because we're trying to work out what the best. There's no easy transition, and you know, the chance for this baton change was now, and we thought it would be at the end of next year. And people in the media are saying, oh, they don't know what they're doing. It's because it was a moving beast for about, you know, 3 or 4 weeks. It changed nearly every day on what it was going to look like, and we've ended up landing in a spot now where it's good for the club, it's good for the players, it's good for me, and I think it's really good for Mitch. You know, once the baton change is there, then, which will be, you know, Saturday night, I'm looking forward to not having to do, you know, 45X meetings on Monday. That's Mitch's responsibility now. And but you know, I can remember when I got the job at Hawthorn, and just how dignified Peter Schwab was to me. You know, through the misfortune of him parting ways with the club, such a decorated servant of our club, and I'll never forget. Just there's never bemoaned the fact that I was now the coach of the Hawthorn Footy Club. He just put all his disappointment aside and just threw his full support behind me, not in a big way, but just enough to know that you know, he was still a Hawthorn person. He was still going to support the club and what its journey was going to be. And I want to be exactly the same with our footy club and Mitch in charge next year.
So, Rui says it's final. When that final siren sounds, it's very final. Are you braced for it? Are you ready for it? Are you protecting against it? Do you, the small moments through the week, last match committee, final training, last address, you're a meticulous planner. Have you thought through each? What's your emotional state?
Yeah, no, I haven't really. I think some others around the club have been thinking that way. You know, there's some part-timers that come and go. You know, we had Nikki Quigley, who's been with us. She's a podiatrist. She's been with us the whole of the 17 years at the footy club, and she usually comes in on a Tuesday. And I was tied up and she had to send me a text because she couldn't. I was in match committee yesterday afternoon, and so it was just like that would have been our last time together. So it's just like, oh well, we'll catch up for a picnic or something with all the medical staff post season if COVID allows once the it all settles down a little bit. But those sorts of moments are happening. But you're so busy with your routine. I'll sit down with a couple of beers after the game with the players. It's my most enjoyable part of footy, even since I was a kid in the bush. Not that I was a drinker when I was a teenager, but the best part of footy and cricket coming out of the bush was doing something with your mates, and some of those mates, as a kid from Canaiva, some of those mates were 35 and 40-year-olds. You're playing in cricket teams, you got 12-year-olds and 40 and 45-year-olds in the side, but so this mateship and camaraderie between all different ages and cross sections of the community, but sitting down and enjoying a drink after the game and the drive home and dropping in or picking up the yabby nets that you've dropped in dams on the way to the cricket, and then you're picking them up on the way home. And sometimes, as a young teenager, it was a 6-can trip on the way home for some of the older ones in the car, and we'd be getting the yabby nets. So great memories, and that's what I love about footy, that chance to have a couple of beers after the game with the players.
I'm sure this week's been a lot of reflecting on, and probably the week after and the ensuing weeks is when you'll really be able to reflect on some of the great stories and relationships that you've had. I mean, we've talked the last few years about you've been a coach right the way through, but particularly lately where players have gone to Hawthorn to play under you, which is a far cry from earlier when you actually had to jump on planes and fly to places like Las Vegas around the world, chasing certain key forwards to keep them involved in your football club. Are there any characters or stories along that 17-year journey that really stand out in terms of building relationships and the experiences that you've shared?
Yeah, well, it's been the game itself is about bringing talent to your footy club, and that's what's been enormously difficult for me to leave. Like we've still got guys at the club now that have been heavily invested in Jager O'Meara and Chad Wingard and Jarman Impey and these type of guys. Tom Phillips has just come to our footy club in the last 12 months, and these guys you're still selling part of your vision of what we can do and at different stages, even throughout this season, despite the disappointment of our performance at different stages, we get to this stage of the year and we've drawn with Melbourne and we've beaten Brisbane and we've beaten the Dogs on last weekend and we've beaten GWS and we've beaten Sydney, and this is all with a side that hasn't got Sicily and Gunston and Bruce, and it's just like and young Will Day has hardly played at all for us this year. Young Granger Brass, who's a pick 6 in the draft, has only played 4 or 5 games. So, I'm really excited for where the club can go and what Mitch can do with this group. And the hard part for me is I never wanted to abandon the vision I had for the O'Mearas and that sort of stuff, the chance that they had to try to do something special with this club, and I couldn't just bring myself to just walk out on that. So it was probably always going to be, if it wasn't now, then I get to, the trade period and we bring someone else in from the same message would be sold to them, and my loyalty to them, their loyalty to me. It's just like, we're going to do this together. Can you help us? Just like it was with Josh Gibson and Brian Lake and David Hale and all these other guys along the journey. It's just like, so it was probably always going to be, in a sense, that they were going to have to tiptoe me because I just couldn't walk out on those relationships. But when I say tiptoe, I'm comfortable with it. I knew the baton change was going to happen at some point in time. I didn't necessarily know it was going to be Mitch. But we brought him back to the club for the purpose of the club make a decision on whether or not he thought that he was the best guy to coach the club post me. And as it's turned out, it was. Now, as I said before, it's been a little bit messy how that's all transpired, but we all sit here now just really comfortable on what it will look like for the footy club going forward, and that was the purpose really of coming on tonight, through Zoom, and fans can't come to the game on the weekend. It was actually to thank our supporters and members for a great journey that we've had, but not be disappointed that I'm going. It's just like it's a baton change. It's like Kanga handing it over to Parko, and then Yabby handing it over to Joycey on 2 occasions. Yab got crook for a year there and needed to hand it on to Joycey for a year, and then take it back again, and then a couple of years later, give it back to Joyce again, and they win the 91 flag. It's just like my turn to hand the baton to Mitch, and I'm really excited and want our members and supporters to be excited about where this might go for our footy club for the next chapter of the hard way.
So what has Hawthorn meant to you, Alastair?
Oh, well, I had a great passion for the game from very, very young age, and that was indoctrinated. I grew up in a country town that was cricket for 6 months of the year, and then come Labor Day, you put away your whites and your spikes and cricket bat, and you pull out your Tommy Sharon, and then it was 6 months of that. And I spent 10 years working out how I could play this game at the top level. Then I spent 10 years fortunate enough to play it, but never a great player. I went tall and lean, and I knew how to play the game, but I didn't have the athleticism to do it really, really well, particularly in the way the modern game's played. I probably might have been well suited to play in the Collingwood six-footer era back in the 50s and 60s, but the game was just... I had to turn into this gnarly little tagger, which many would say, "Oh, that suits your character." But I had to do that to survive and play as long as I could. And I played for 10 years across 2 clubs. One of the great things that happened, and fortunate things that happened, I got traded to Melbourne for. I just thought, like you always do, that the way that your club does it is the only way. And it took, when I went to Melbourne, it was under Barmy, and as we've seen with Barmy's success in the game, not as a coach, funnily enough, but as, strange enough, in a football manager's role, but he just had a different look on the game, very, very successful. And I was very, very fortunate to see the North Melbourne way and then see the Melbourne way and then explore. That was the catalyst, really, for me to go and explore not just other clubs in the competition, but around the world. How do other clubs and other coaches do things, because there's just so much to learn from them. But I've still got an appetite to do that sort of stuff, and we'll just see where it takes us.
There was a lot of talk in the tribute earlier about your ability to win players' heads in terms of developing a style or a system, and I mean, you should feel guilty for revolutionising and modernising the way the game's played. We've got you to thank for the zones and all of that sort of stuff. So
We're trying to break it the other way now.
I hope you feel guilty about that. We're trying to undo all of your work, but I think coaches need one or the other. They need to be able to see the game really well, or find a way into your heart and motivate. The great coaches do it really well, and you've been able to do both for a long period. We know your ability to see the game and all that is so strong, but how have you consistently been able to win your players' hearts over 17 years?
Oh, well, it's not... We've got a team of people at Hawthorn, so it's really easy at this point in time to say, "Oh, well, let's acknowledge the coach. He's been there for a long period of time."
We know the coach plays such a big role in that, though.
Yeah, without a doubt. But the support that you get from, like, Dunstall and Gowers and Vandenberg as the footy directors, for instance, pivotal roles in our footy club. Just lean on them so heavily. Our footy managers are Mark Evans and Chris Fagan. Graham Wright, Rob McCartney. We've had rippers there, but the support that you get, but in particular support that I've got from a family. Like, this isn't just Clarkson's the coach. It's the Karen is the wife who, she helps me select people. Like, I can remember when I first arrived at the club, she said to me, Damien Hardwick and Todd Viney and Ross Smith have to be in this group. It's just like... and not just because she knew anything about their credentials in terms of would they be capable coaches, but she knew of them as men, and she knew of them as family men, and she knew their wives and their children. And it's just like, if we're going to be this family club and we're going to indoctrinate or re-indoctrinate, we've sort of lost our way a little bit, but re-indoctrinate the true Kennedy values of the Hawthorn Footy Club, then we've got to get these people involved. So I'm nowhere near as good as a selection of people as what she is. I'm better selecting players in that sense, but she was outstanding at being able to, help me pick the people that this team of people we're going to drive this club forward. And, as the senior coach, you get a lot of the accolades if it goes well, and you certainly get kicked pretty harshly if you don't go so well. But I know that one of the pivotal parts that Karen's played, but the decision-making around our footy club has been the selection of people that could support the senior coach in the mission and the vision that we created for our club.
I presume the limitations of the age mean family can't share the day with you. Is that going to be hard, not to necessarily have them there on the last day?
Well, we've laughed about this, and I don't mean to sound insincere about it, but I've said, listen, you've been to 250 of our games. It's just like, you've seen a fair few of them. So don't be too worried about it. You know, let's try to get you there if we can. But if the protocols, we're also very mindful of the fact that we're very, very fortunate to still be playing, and there's lots of people, like there's 50,000 supporters from both Richmond and Hawthorn, maybe 60 that would want to come to this game, but they can't. So it's just like, well, let's not be too greedy and ask, oh, just can we have our family there? I know that they would like to be there, and I'd like them to be there, and it's the same with Sean and Amy and the 4 Burgoyne kids. It's going to be the same with Ed and his Eddie Betts and his crew. This weekend with Anna, and I think there's Billy and Louie and Louie, and it's just like it's just like the 7 dwarfs with. I mean, you just imagine the father sons and the father daughters of the Burgoyne Betts. They're both from this beautiful little club, Mallee Park in Port Lincoln, and to think what those 2 lads have done for the game. I mean, I know that it's all there. Let's celebrate Clarko, but what about those 2 lads? You know, finishing up this. You know, we were fortunate enough to spend some time with Ed in international rules.
And the kids.
And the kids, it was just, you know, Anna did such a great job with those. And, you know, Dave Money just played his 350th over.
We had him on, we were reminiscing about that last
we were carting his kids through airports, and, you know, it was just... It was just great, that international rules, to just spend time, as I said earlier, with guys from other clubs that you've been... foes with such a long period of time, but at the end of the day, if they were within the walls of your footy club, you just love them, you know. But the game, you know, it's so territorial and enemy driven. It's just like we're fighting against them this week, but then you catch up with them with a great opportunity like international rules, and you just realise that they're just the same as the ones that are within your club.
So enjoy the last day at Hawthorn. Listening to you, I feel like we'll see you back on Coach's Night. Who's to say what?
Oh, Jared, that's cheeky.
Sure we'll see you
cheeky.
Yeah, well, listen, I've had a great journey. I'm so fortunate and grateful for the opportunity I've had at the Hawthorn Footy Club. But before that, you know, part of my apprenticeship, you know, at Port Adelaide with Choco, and then prior to that, you know, a great couple of years at Centrals and St Kilda and wherever I had a long apprenticeship to get into AFL coaching, but just so fortunate, you know, particularly Dunstall. You know, he's just so pivotal to my progress. You know, I'm saddened by, you know, what's going on with Teague, because, you know, I was in a similar position at the end of my second year, and Bung and the board just stuck by me. They knew the vision, they knew it was going to be some hard yards, and we just stayed the path. And I'm really, really fortunate that someone like Jason, and others too, but particularly Jason, in the initial stages saw the potential of me as a coach, but then to see it through in tough times was really, really important.
Enjoy the day. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks,